How does invoice factoring improve a business's cash flow? First, we're going to break down a couple of things in this whole entire video to help you understand what invoice factoring is, how it helps the cash flow of your business, what's needed to qualify, and what are those steps that you're going to have to take. My name is Jonathan Fodera. I've been in small business lending for the past 14 years, and I own integrated business financing. So let's get into this. First off, what is invoice factoring? Invoice factoring is when you have an invoice, you're working business to business or business to government. So let's break that down. Trucking and logistics falls into this category. Manufacturing falls into this category. There's a whole bunch of businesses that fall into this category. But let's just say if you're in manufacturing and you have an order, right? So you make the product, you ship it out, and then you send them an invoice. Typically that invoice is going to be due in 15 to 30 days. Simple, easy. Sometimes it could take 45 days, sometimes it's 60 days, and in rare cases, it could take 90 days. So once they get that product, they have 30 days to pay you if it's net 30 terms. Well, what happens? You're waiting to get paid 30 days, and if they pay you late, it's going to make your cash flow tighter, meaning you already paid your employees to produce the product, you've already paid for the inventory or the supplies to make the product, you ship it out, and now you're waiting 30 days or longer to get paid. And what happens is, it's hard to scale when you have that going on because your cash flow gets delayed. So what you do is you come to someone like us, or there's certain banks that do it too, but what you would do is you'd sell that invoice. So typically, if you produce that invoice, you sell that invoice today for cash today that gets deposited in your account the next day for typically a small fee. So let's break this down. If you come in and you get a 90% advance rate, meaning if you have a $100,000 invoice and you get a 90% advance rate, that means you're gonna get $90,000 in your bank account tomorrow. The rest is held in a reserve. Once your client pays the factor, meaning the person that factored that invoice for you, the reserve is released minus a fee. That fee usually ranges anywhere from almost 1% up to 4%, depending on the risk associated with it, right? And obviously the higher volumes you do, the cheaper that can be. So that actually will accelerate your cash flow. And then any future invoices you can factor get paid today so you can continue to grow and scale. We'll break this down in a little bit, but let's just go back to this example. In this example, right, you got $90,000 today, your client pays the factor after 30 days, and let's just say it's 1%. So it costs you $1,000 and they release the reserve, you get the other $9,000 once your client's paid. So really, to get your money today, it costs you $1,000. All right, so that speeds up the receivable or speeds up the cash flow. One of my friends, Austin, he works for large companies doing graphics, right? And one of his concerns were, the cost of factoring. Well, after I got him out a term sheet, he was like, wow, this is a lot better than I expected, right? Because we're a marketplace. And so now he can factor all his invoices and he can take on larger jobs, bigger jobs. Not only that, but it's going to be easier for him to grow and scale. So he was very happy and he was blown away that it was on the lower end of that spectrum that I gave you. Next, let's go into how it speeds up and how it helps your cash flow. The whole point of invoice factoring is so you're not waiting on someone to pay you. Because if somebody pays you late, or let's just say they pay you in 30 days, and you have multiple jobs coming in, well, guess what? It might be hard to start those jobs. You might have delays because you can't get all the materials that you need. You can't hire the staff that you need when you're growing because you're always waiting for money. That's why invoice factoring is so powerful. Let's give an example in a different industry, right? So in trucking, typically people in trucking get paid, it could be every 7 days, usually it's every 15, sometimes it's even net 30. But if you have drivers that are going and delivering products all over the country and you're on net 15 terms, well, that driver expects to get paid that week. That driver also has to put gas in that truck. These are all things that kind of take away from your cash flow because you're constantly laying out money for fuel, you're constantly laying out money for salaries. So what happens in that situation is, let's just say you get a couple more clients on, now you have to outlay more cash to get those jobs going because you have to pay the driver, you have to have the truck there, you have to pay for the fuel. So it's hard to grow and scale. It's hard to take on, like if you get a job or a contract with Amazon, well, guess what? They need you to deliver on time, otherwise you're going to lose the contract. So I have a friend, his name's John. He's been in logistics. He's been a client of mine for probably 8 or 9 years now, maybe even longer. I always help him with getting more trucks and bringing on staff. But he finally, after 3 years, decided, hey, let's give this invoice factoring a try, because, you know, he was growing and scaling at a very rapid clip, and he got tired of waiting the entire time for his clients to pay. So we did invoice factoring. He typically does now $1 million a month, and because of his volumes, he's almost paying, I think it's less than 1%. So that's allowed him to speed up his cash flow, the cash flow of his business, where he can go out and he's comfortable taking on new contracts because he knows he's getting paid the next day he submits the invoice. He told me, he goes, I can't believe we waited this long to do this. I know you've tried to get me to do this before, and I was a little hesitant, but thank you so much, because now he brought on 3 bigger, larger contracts, and he's going to be able to grow and scale and net more money, because the cost is really not prohibitive in invoice factoring as long as it's set up properly. So the next thing I want to go over, now that we see how it improves cash flow and what's entailed, let's look at what's needed to apply, and also what are some of the qualifications that you need. So in invoice factoring, your credit is not going to be a determining factor. It's the credit of the business or your client that you're serving, all right? As long as they pay on time or they have good business credit, you can factor that invoice. And why is that important? Well, 1, it's not getting reported to your credit, and it's not based on your credit. 2, as you are bringing on new clients, if the factor does not want to factor them, that should be a red flag. You shouldn't want to work with them. Why? Because they either pay late or sometimes they don't pay. And that will prevent you from any big losses in your company, because you don't want to take on a contract, not know who you're working with, meaning do they pay on time? Do they pay their bills? Have they not paid people in the past? Because if you outlay all that money, you could be out. All right, so that's some of the advantages and the qualifications. Really, you just need an accounts receivable report, and you need to be in business a couple months. And it has to be a reputable business, or it has to be a government contract, and you can factor it. Now, let's go into what you need to apply. I mean, it's really simple. It's a 1-page application. Your last 3 to 6 months of business bank statements, a driver's license, a voided check, and your accounts receivable report, a detailed breakdown of all your accounts receivable, meaning the money that's coming in and who the companies are that are paying you, and a sample invoice, right? So you need that sample invoice. Once you have that sample invoice, you send it in, and typically in 12 to 24 hours, you get a term sheet, and that term sheet will break down what your advance rate is, how large the line is that they'll give you, meaning how much of your receivables you can factor. It's going to tell you what the cost is, and it literally breaks down every single thing that you need to be able to make a decision and move forward with that. And then after that's done, you sign the term sheet, they go into a final underwrite, they get everything set up. The whole process really only takes a day or 2. And once it's set up and established, you never really have to do anything again. And that's the beauty of it, because now you can submit all your invoices on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, get the money the next day, and continue to grow and scale. Now, if you already have factoring, and this is a common question we get all the time, and you want to see if we can beat it, all you have to do is submit all those documents plus your current term sheet or your contract. And 99% of the time we can beat it, because there's no real middleman. We go direct to the source for you. And last but not least, I want to tell you a little story. We had somebody that was coming in, they were in manufacturing, and they had a factor they were using for about 3 years. And believe it or not, what they did, they sold cookie dough to the supermarkets. Well, he was always looking for, hey, what's the best deal we can get? He came to us, my buddy Austin, we beat the terms that he had handily, and they moved forward. And what we set him up with was saving him thousands each and every month. He was very, very happy. He said, I can't believe you beat that. I shopped this all over the place, and we did, right? So that helped his business reduce the cost of factoring. So I just want to recap a couple things. We went over what factoring is, we went over how it improves your cash flow, and we also went over the qualifications and everything you need to have ready to start factoring. So my challenge to you is look through your accounts receivable report, study that, and see if your cash flow is being held up because your clients are paying either net 30, net 45, or some of them are paying slow. And if that's the case, reach out to us at Integrated and we'll help you. Remember, always integrate your business, and you can find us at www.integratedbusinessfinancing.com. Can't wait to speak with you.